This is the Wealth Ability Show with Tom Wheelwright. Way more money, way less taxes.
So how do you know whether that project that is your idea or somebody in your organization's idea is going to succeed? How do you know it's a project you should even take on? Well, today we're going to discover a tool that we can use to actually predetermine whether a project is going to be successful and actually make sure it becomes successful by using this tool. And it is a tool developed by one of my mentors, Dan Sullivan. And Dan, it is such a privilege to have you on the Wealth Ability Show today.
Yeah, likewise for me, Tom. And, a lot of what you do, as I've read your book, a lot of what you do is break down tax exemption breakthroughs for entrepreneurs. And what I thought about, because I knew what you were going to talk about today, that every strategy that you have for tax exemption can be treated as a project.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's a good point. And then you got groups of projects that way, and they add up to, that's what adds up to the success. I love that. So Dan, for those of you who don't know, is the co-author of Who Not How, which is how I met Dan, because I read that book and that was a life changer for me, Dan. Tell us a little bit, if you will. Most of our listeners probably know something of your background, but give us a little bit more about why you got into coaching in the first place.
Yeah, and I'm told, I have no way of checking up on this, but I may be the original pioneer for entrepreneurial coaching. And I started actually this year in August 15th. It'll be 50 years that I've been coaching entrepreneurs. Wow. And all the other pioneers, I think, are dead. So, and I've just stuck with it. I've stuck with it. And in the early days, the biggest job was to explain to entrepreneurs what coaching was. But that's a common term today. But the big thing is it's a thinking program. Basically, anybody can use the tools, but the people who seem to be most motivated to use the thinking tools are entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, talented entrepreneurs, and ambitious entrepreneurs. And they have a problem, is that they have more ideas than they have capability to carry out the ideas. So along the way, I found myself, being an entrepreneur, subject to the same anxiety about starting a project. And then, of course, you don't want to do the project. You want other people to do the project. And so, I explored and experimented with a lot of different approaches to this, but I hit on one, and it's called the impact filter, that you structure a project by what the impact is going to be. Okay. And the first part of that, there's two parts to it. The first part is you have to sell yourself on the project before you talk about it to anyone else.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question about that, Dan. So to me, sometimes that's the easiest part, is because it's your idea. So, this is a great idea. My question is, how do you sell yourself with being, and at the same time, be realistic about selling yourself?
Yeah, I have a tendency, and I share this with a lot of other entrepreneurs, that I brainstorm in public. Okay. And that is, I've got this really great idea, and, a great idea. And so I think we should start doing this great idea. And the people who are best at actually carrying out a project are people who already are working on a lot of your ideas.
Right.
Yeah. And what I found is I was a troublemaker for my team, in the sense that I was overloading them with projects, and they didn't have the ability to understand, one, the priority of the project, the new idea, and they didn't have any understanding how their progress was going to be measured. Okay. And the other thing is they would wonder, well, he has a lot of ideas. Is he completely sold on the idea?
Mm.
So I have a I have a rule for myself, and I try to communicate this to the other entrepreneurs. Never try to sell somebody else on something that you're not sold on yourself. In other words, they should have a confidence that if Dan is telling me about this, it's 100% go.
Well, I think that a lot of us, we're disruptors in our own organization. My organization kicked me out of the office 20 years ago because I was disrupting too much when I go in. And I still find that every once in a while, because I'm like you, I'll think out loud is what I'll do. I'll think out loud, and actually saying something helps me learn. And so I'm actually learning while I'm talking. So I'm there in a staff meeting or a leadership meeting, and I'm saying things, and they're going, "Oh, well, this is what we have to do. This is the priority." And no, that's not the priority. I'm just learning here. I'm just thinking out loud. So that's why I like the impact filter, which is the tool we're talking about today. What I liked about that when I first saw it and Who Not How was it allows me to kind of go, okay, wait a minute. All right, I can say this out loud to maybe, one or two people on my leadership team. They understand me. They know I'm just learning, but I can't say it to the whole organization until I've been through the impact filter. Does that make sense? That the ordering?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and this is just a general philosophy. I mean, I've been at this for 50 years, and at the beginning it was just me. It wasn't. I didn't have a team around me, and the great breakthrough for me was meeting and marrying my business partner, because she has Bab Smith. She has an incredible ability to put teams together and the right people on the right team. Okay. So that was a huge, this really relates to the book that you mentioned, that kind of introduced us to each other, which was the Who Not How, that I have a goal. I can see, the problem is I can see the goal completed
Right.
fairly quickly after I started. But since it's not their project, they can't see the end result. So you have to have a communication form that tells them what your intentions are and why it's so important to you to do this. And then that's the selling yourself on it. So they know that if they see the impact filter, that I'm sold on it, because I don't tell them any ideas these days unless I'm sold on it.
So do you do an impact filter before you deliver that information to anybody else?
Yeah, totally.
Always.
I tell you, and I've taken it a lot further in my organization, and that is you can't have a meeting with me unless you send me an impact filter the day before.
Yes,
and
as I learned in preparation for this podcast.
And I can't have a meeting with you unless you receive an impact filter the day before. The reason is that you're enabling them to engage with the idea before they have to make a commitment, in-person commitment. And what I find for myself is that maybe, maybe 2 times out of 3, it isn't actually an idea that we're going to do. It's an idea that I need to think through. I need to think through before. And I'll get to the end of the impact filter, and I said, I don't think this is important enough to get other people's talents involved. But it has helped me in thinking it through.
So it helps you get clarity on just how important it is, what the priority is.
Yeah. So in the impact filter form, the left-hand side is the selling myself. And it starts, well, this is the project, and I define the project. And then I'll say why it's so important. This is a very, very important project. I sort of define the project, and then I say why it's so important. And then I say this would be the ideal outcome if we actually completed this project. And then I drop down and that's sort of thinking. And then I go and say, what's the best result if we actually take action on this? And what's the worst result if we don't take action? And what I noticed, you got to create an emotional contrast. You got to, it's got to be sort of binary. You know, if we go, this is the payoff. If we don't go, this is a penalty, because I'm very, very committed to taking action. So I have a bias towards, I'm sure you do, Tom. I have a bias towards new things completed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's interesting to me because you look at the worst result there. If the worst result for not taking action is not a big deal, then maybe you shouldn't take the action.
Yeah. Because we're all operating within time constraints. We're operating within money constraints. Okay. And I don't want to be an obstacle to other people's progress by overloading them with ideas that, one, aren't that important, but secondly, I'm not really committed to. And, you know, we use a profiling form in Strategic Coach created by a marvelous person, Kathy Colby, out of,
Yes,
I think lives fairly close to you.
she does. I know her well.
And, but you and I have, you know, the way we make a decision is to make a decision.
Right.
You know, but there are other people who need a lot of facts before they can take action. There's other people who need the whole system in front of them, the system of action, the system of completion, before they can take action. Okay. And we're valuable in our talents, but we're not valuable in our talents if that's the only talent.
This is true. We need others around us that complement what we do. So let me go back to this left side of the impact filter. And I want to start with the project focus, because one of the things that you've talked about a lot in the times I've been with you is naming something. Mm-hmm. And so when you do that, right, the very first thing on top is project focus. What's the project? Do you name it right then?
Yeah. Well, I sort of name the project, the hope for, you know, improvement, or the
Got
success.
it.
So I try to lay as much, put the reason for the project right in that project line.
So why I'm curious about this. Why is the name so important?
Well, it's because you're having a new baby here, and it's really important to name the baby. Up front, you know.
You don't want to just call it baby.
I mean, if you had a baby and you didn't name it, there would be all sorts of problems to that.
All right. Know what to call it. Know what to call it.
Know what to call it. But what that does is it gives me a handle that this is distinctly different from anything I've done before. In other words, it's new, it's better, and it's different. Okay. And that's very important for them to know, because they have to go through an educational process to get their minds around it, because they have a lot of other projects they're working on.
Right.
Okay. And they all have names. And if you have a project that doesn't have a name, it just doesn't register for them.
Well, and it seems like it's actually part of the sales process for them.
Yeah.
Is that you're selling them, and part of selling them is, hey, it's the name helps sell something. That's why we name things for the marketplace, right? Is that name has to help sell it.
Yeah, I always laughed. You know, I had a deep religious education when I was a kid. I was born and raised an educated Catholic, and I was always interested in an epistle by St. Paul, who was going to Athens that didn't have any of the new religion. And it was very clever. He did something very clever. He says, I notice that you have a monument here in the marketplace in Athens to the unknown God. And he says, I'm here to tell you what the unknown God is.
We got to name him for you.
Yeah, we got to name him for you. It's good that you have this monument, but it's been a placeholder. And now we're going to tell you who the unknown God is, you know. And I just always thought that, you know, quite apart from, you know, the religious aspect of it, it was kind of like a real compelling offer.
Very clever. Very,
Yeah,
very
very
clever.
clever. Yeah.
So after naming it, you start first of all with the purpose. So when you talk about purpose, what are you talking about there? Because people use that word a lot. What does that mean in the context of this impact filter?
Yeah. So you're assuming that it's going to get done here. In other words, but once you have the project done, then what new, better, and different thing happens as a result of the project? In other words, you're simply saying the reason why we want to do this isn't for itself. It's that when we have this completed, then this can happen, and this can happen, and this can happen. Okay, so you got to paint a future for yourself. You know, is it worth doing? Because you have a lot of competition in your brain of you could be doing this, you could be doing this. So, and the other thing is I found that if I'm not 100% committed to a new project, it never works.
Right.
It never works. So I want to give a really clear-cut purpose here. And it's easy for me to sell myself on anything new. You know,
Exactly.
you know, but the truth is if it's only me that's sold on it, it's not going to happen.
Right. And I think that crux of the matter here is that this you have on page 50 of Who Not How, right? So you're trying to sell the who's on doing it. And they've got to feel like the purpose is worthwhile. It's not just you that has to feel the purpose is worthwhile, right?
Yeah, and what I want is give them a lot of solid evidence why they should take ownership for this project.
I like it. And then you go next. Next is importance, right? So first of all, yes, there's a purpose to this. Here's the goal with it. But here's why it's so important. Because they have to know, they have to feel that importance. How do you get people when you're writing impact filter? So it sounds like when you write an impact filter, you're doing part of it for yourself to sell yourself, but you're also doing part of it to sell whoever is going to do it. Yeah. And so how do you write that in such a way that you can convey the importance of this project to that person or those people?
Yeah. Tom, there's something that I discovered along the way. It took me a long time to learn this, but it was that probably 80 to 90% of really talented people cannot give a purpose to their talents. And that's why we have entrepreneurial owners, because you and I have an ability to give purpose to anybody. But usually it's in our head.
Right, exactly.
It's in our head. I go, well, I want it. That's the purpose. Well,
or it's cool.
They're already working on 20 things that you said you wanted. And so what you're trying to do is to give them some basis for prioritizing this project. And the other thing is that this should be pointed out right up front, that even if it sounds good, you're only 50% of the deal. You're just laying out the project. Right. Okay. And they have to take 50% of the project. Okay. So I'm trying to give them maximum clarity up front of what seems to really work about this project, but they have some issues. They have some issues because if they're fact finders, I don't need a lot of facts to take action.
Right.
Okay. But if you have in the Kathy Colby profile system, there's people who really do need facts. They can't understand it unless they have a lot of facts. And so I'm trying to put them in the best position, one, to grasp what the project is, but to see how this actually fits with them getting better at what they do if we do this project.
Yeah, I like that. I was talking to one of our clerical staff the other day and said, so what do you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? So, well, I like the things that are important. And I'm going, so well, what is it?
They want to be
so
heroes.
My question was, what is it you think is not important that you're doing? Because if it really isn't important, we should not be doing it.
Yeah. And so you've got to do two things with a sale. One of them is you have to give a compelling offer that the other person is, emotionally, emotionally interested in this. And, and I don't give impact filters, and I'm sure you've been doing a lot of them, but there's just some people you would not call on to do this particular project.
Right.
So I've already got in my mind who the who's are that are going to do the project, and I know what their talents are, and I know what their skills are. And, I've seen what they do really great. And what I'm trying to do is to set it up so that they get exactly something that fits in the direction that they're going.
Got it. I love it. And then you put in the ideal outcome. So, we've got importance, but how does the ideal outcome differ from importance?
Yeah. The ideal outcome is that the project is finished, okay? And I'm going to give them on the right side of the impact filter, I'm going to give them the progress and measurement steps that we call them success criteria, okay? We'll know that this project was done if this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. And as much as possible, I like to put numbers and milestones in the project on the other side. In other words, I'm saying that this is what I have in mind for how this project develops, okay? And this is what I want to see.
So I've noticed that a lot. So, when I'm a strategic coach with you, you're always giving an example of, we're going through a particular tool. You're giving an example. I've noticed that because we discuss with other people in the room, right? But I've noticed that yours always have a lot more numbers and a lot more clear numbers than anybody else, frankly. Mm-hmm. Why is that so difficult to put numbers there? Because it seems like we have a tough time quantifying. We just want to put almost like platitudes in there as opposed to specific criteria.
Bumper stickers.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're going to feel really good. I said, that's not a measurement, that's a wish, and, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm probably a natural psychologist, but I'm not a trained psychologist. And what comes through to me is the brain has a lot of things to deal with. Everybody's brain has a lot to deal with. But there's two things that really gets the brain's attention: something that's got a number on it, and somebody that's a clear-cut success event. In other words, that that we'll know as we're going along that this has a number, so we've increased it by this number, or it's an event that we have certain actions that we take. And I try to lay out how I see it getting finished. Okay, and who, I'll also put in the success criteria, who so-and-so does something. For example, I write a quarterly book. Every quarter I come out with a book. Well, there's me on the team, but there's 9 other people on the team. So I show the progression of the relay of one person getting something done and handing it other person. So all projects are a relay. They're a relay race, okay? Because there's one person who might be the project manager of the project, okay? And I'm laying out how I see them being successful.
So one of the things you also, you were saying the other day that you create several tools every quarter as well. Do you just create the tools, or do you do an impact filter to determine what tool you should create?
Yeah, I use a smaller version of the impact filter, which is called the fast filter, and it's got just best result, worst result on one side, and then 5 success criteria. And so in the case of the fast filter, this is just me getting clear about the project. Okay.
Got it.
And then I'll do, if it's going to be a team project, then I'll complete the big impact.
I like that. So, okay. Got it. Well, on the criteria, if we can wrap up with this. But so I did an impact filter this morning because I want to create a communication tool for tax advisors. CPAs are notorious for being poor communicators.
Yes.
The C in CPA does not stand for communicator.
Yeah.
And
it's actually a requirement that they be poor communicators.
it appears that way. It does appear that way. And I've been training CPAs for years and years and years. And the one thing I've never been able to train them in is communication. No matter how many times, how many events we do, how much training we do on communication, they don't get it. So my thought was, well, let's create a tool for them because they love tools. Okay. Yeah. It's like you were saying, you know, some people just need to follow a process, and they're not going to create the process, which is the problem with communication. Normally you're creating the process of communication when you have that communication. But if you have a process to follow, well, they can follow a process. CPAs are really good at following a process. So I want to create this communication tool for tax advisors so that they can better communicate with their clients. So they're not frustrated. The client's not frustrated, and the CPAs get the information that they need in order to serve the client. Because one of the big frustrations for CPAs is they ask for information seemingly like 5 times before they get the information they actually need. Well, I learned a long time ago from another one of my mentors that communication is the result you get. So if you're not getting the result, it's your problem. It's because you're not communicating. Okay. But I want to kind of shift here quickly to the success criteria. So thinking of that being the project, how do you, I'll read you, if I could, Dan, I'll read out loud what I have a success criteria, but what I'd help with is let's put numbers to this. Okay. Yep. And some of them sort of had numbers, but this is something I struggle with. I do struggle with putting numbers for it. So the first one is that now our CPAs are franchisees. They're actually our franchisees. They embrace and use the tool on a daily basis.
Yeah. 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 And what I would do with that is I'm just trying to think of your franchisees that basically what you're saying, in order for you to be successful, this is something you have to do every day.
Right.
It's not going to work if you don't do it every day. I remember the great football coach, Vince Lombardi, and he was asked once, you're so successful, you must have some enormously sophisticated offensive schemes and defensive schemes. And he says, yes, we do. Our offensive scheme is that when we have the ball, we knock them all down. When they have the ball, we knock them all down. He says, I found if you just knock the other team down, everything works.
So it is just one thing.
Yeah, just one thing. Yeah. When he first met his team, he held up a football and he says, gentlemen, this is a football. Do you realize that it's important for us to have the football and important for them not to have the football?
Simplicity. It's all simplicity.
Yeah. So the big thing is that you're giving direction. I mean, the whole success of the project is that they are both certain and confident that they know how to do this. And they have the capabilities. You don't have the capabilities.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm trying to do is to put the other person in the best possible situation to understand exactly what the project is, and then exactly how you see them being successful. I want to blueprint their success.
I love it. I love it. So let me give you one more, okay? And one more of my success criteria, and that's that the CPAs are more willing to proactively speak to clients. How do you measure that? So what I'm looking for is I want them to feel so comfortable talking to clients that they're willing to actually reach out to clients rather than waiting until a client calls them. How would you measure that?
I'd measure it by the number of clients that they reach out to. So I'd say where now you may be doing 5 clients reaching out in a quarter, I want you in the first quarter to be reaching out to 10. Okay. And the next quarter, 15, the next quarter, 20. Okay.
I love it.
But use this tool when you reach out to them.
So it's just more direction,
Yeah, more direction.
basically more specific direction.
Yeah, because you don't know, I mean, if you're talking to a number of people, some of them may, be averse to reaching out to clients, and some of them love reaching out to clients. Okay, so probably the best thing is establish a number of the clients that you're going to reach out to in, let's say, the first quarter.
Yeah, and then you would know if the tool's working, then they are actually doing it.
Yeah, and if the tool isn't working for them, then they have a basis for coming back to you,
Right.
And everything like that. But what I want is everything on the table for everybody when the project starts. And if they're having problems, I want to hear about their problems right up front. I don't want to hear about their problems 80% through.
Yes, for sure. That's awesome. Well, this has been great, Dan. It's so practical. If you could give like 2 or 3 recommendations to an entrepreneur that might start to want to use something like your impact filter, what would you recommend?
Well, first of all, I'm going to make a compelling offer to them that if you use the impact filter to set up a meeting, generally speaking, the meetings are going to last 15 minutes rather than 2 hours. And if you send the impact filter to the other people, it might get down to 5 minutes. If you do it before and send it, this is what we're going to talk about, because they have a complete 24 hours to digest what it is that you want before the meeting actually starts. So many meetings, people, that's based on if I get 10 unprepared people in a room and then rub 10 unprepared people together, we're going to get a breakthrough. And I said,
Right.
no, my experience tells me that what you get is 10 times more problems and confusion than you had, So I think it forces everybody to be 100% when the meeting actually happens.
I love it. I love it. And I know in the book Who Not How, you actually offer a free copy of the impact filter if they go to strategiccoach.com/build Who Not How, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So go there. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend the book, Who Not How. You see it behind me. And this is one of the key books that's made a major impact in my life. So highly recommend it. Highly recommend Strategic Coach. I've been participant for a few years now, and it's every month it has an impact on our business, and a positive one at that. And the impact filter has had one of the biggest impacts for us. So I want to thank you, Dan, for coming on and sharing this as well.
Can I ask you? My
please.
question, since our conversation started, what new insights about the impact filter have come through?
I think the importance of that this is a sales tool for selling them. It's not just for selling you and kind of identifying should you do it or not, but it's actually, this is the way to motivate the team to do it, and actually to make sure that the outcome, the criteria are sufficient. I look at it, are those criteria sufficient that we should undertake this task? And that's kind of where I go is, because the question that we started with was, is the task worth doing? Is the project worth doing? And I think that if the success criteria are big enough, if the success is important enough, then you can undertake the task. But if those criteria aren't that important, that you can put a number to it. I mean, like if I could get franchisees, you gave a perfect example. If I can get my franchisees to reach out to 10 clients a month, that would be amazing. It would be, for some of them, that's 10 clients more than they're reaching out to now, right?
Yeah, and using the impact filter as the means of communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's really amazing. I remember reading a couple of years before he died, Steve Jobs was interviewed. It might have been Fortune magazine, And the interviewer, and I think it's on video, the interviewer asked him, what would you say are the 10 biggest successes that have gotten you and Apple to where you are? And he said it was the 10 ideas of mine that I said no to.
I love it.
Before I communicated it to anybody.
I love, yes, I think that's the key, Dan. Before you communicate it to everybody else, I think a lot of us have learned that the hard way, that we tend to communicate things long before that they are ripe for communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And Dan, strategiccoach.com is where we can find more information about you. I know you've got not just Who Not How, but other books out there.
Yeah.
And like to, suggest everybody take a good look at Strategic Coach. If you're looking at how do you improve your business? How do you improve your life? I'd go into Who Not How to learn about the 4 freedoms, because you talk a lot about the 4 freedoms and Who Not How. Those are the freedoms. When we're entrepreneurs, it's because we want freedom. That's why we're entrepreneurs. And, when we learn these things and we use things like the impact filter and Strategic Coach, my result is always way more money and way less taxes. Thanks, everyone.
Money's a good scorecard.
Money's a good scorecard. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Wealth Ability Show with Tom Wheelwright. Way more money, way less taxes. To learn more, go to wealthability.com.